All right, good morning. Joining me now on Newsport is none other than the Queensland Water Minister, Glenn Butcher. Glenn, welcome to Newsport.
Yeah, morning. Good to see you.
What a pity you're wearing the wrong jumper though, Glenn.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure most of your watchers and listeners and readers of your paper are probably wearing maroon today as well. So
Tonight's a Blues night. We'll get cracking on some hard questions for you.
Yeah, you're right.
First off, Glenn, who's responsible for the most catastrophic water security failure ever seen in the history of the Douglas Shire? Your state government or Douglas Shire Council?
Well, quite simply, the water supply in most parts of Queensland is delivered in bulk water supply by the Queensland government. Local councils are responsible, and particularly the Douglas Shire Council is responsible for the distribution of the water in the region. They charge their ratepayers fees on their bills every year. And the council is responsible for those pipes that are in the ground delivering the water to those communities.
So Douglas Shire Council? Well,
it certainly is owned by the Douglas Shire Council, and we want to make sure that as a state government we support councils, not only just here in North Queensland but all over Queensland. We have big water entities in different parts of the state, in southeast Queensland, but generally in regional Queensland, water distribution and networks under the ground are delivered by the local council.
The past 6 months in the Douglas Shire and this part of the world have been amongst the hardest ever seen in history. I mean, Douglas Shire residents have been drinking bottled water. They've had to limit shower times. They've been on level 3 water restrictions now for, just recently up until 6 months. Yep. There's been a lot of mental health issues with water issues and so on and so forth. Did the state government abandon Douglas Shire residents in their most time of need over the past 6 months?
Oh, absolutely not. We put support on the ground straight away after the flood went through.
Can you just describe some of those resources you provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of our biggest providers in southeast Queensland were up here during Christmas time, New Year's Eve, Christmas Day. They were on the ground. So we had groups in Brisbane, Unity Water, were up here, had people on the ground. We had support teams up here. The Director General had a CEO in place at the time to help out the council during this time, particularly with the water side of things. I was up here in the Port Douglas region, in Mossman particularly, having a look at the intake on New Year's Eve. So that's our commitment. We had people up here on the ground, we had support on the ground. Obviously the Queensland government moved very quickly, particularly here in Cairns to start with, and then out to the Port Douglas and Mossman region.
So you feel the state government's done everything it possibly could to support the residents of the Douglas Shire and to make sure that their water supply is functioning?
Yeah, we did everything we possibly could during the natural disaster or after a natural disaster. As you know, a lot of the infrastructure that was under the ground and had been washed away, and the local council did a fantastic job at the time to make sure that those works were, one, identified, and two, the work started early on the ground. Our department and certainly the teams that we set up here during that period did everything they possibly could to assist the council to make sure that we could get that water supply up. Obviously, trying to get the water out of the intake at the gorge was very demanding on council to try and get those reservoirs filled up so that water could get sent to Port Douglas particularly. But that was very challenging. These things don't take five seconds to do. So we had support on the ground, we had support in at council, we had teams even up in Woodrow as well at the same time because they were extremely damaged during this rain event. And we had people as soon as we possibly could while it was safe to get up there and try and work through their water reticulation system and how we could help on the ground. So to say that the state government didn't show any interest or didn't care is really not true at all. We certainly had people up here. We had a lot of people, and as I said, we had workers at some of our water entities from Brisbane away from their families on Christmas Day up here helping the community.
So you're satisfied with your response?
Oh, absolutely. But we'll continue to work with the council. Being mindful, I noted a little while ago you had a catch up with Deb Frecklington, and she was talking about that the state government's done nothing for Port Douglas. Port Douglas, the Douglas Council has been successful in two of our building our regions funding in the water space. We provided them $5 million in round one of building our regions, which helped them build one of these reservoirs that I'm talking about. And we also funded them nearly $1 million in the water treatment facility that they have in Port Douglas. So And I do have a scoop for you today, and you probably no one's heard this, no major media's heard
Well,
it.
please reveal it on Newsport.
We've been working very closely with the Douglas Shire Council in relation to a second offtake to take water from a river rather than out of the gorge, where we know that there's big troubles up there whenever it rains now, like it is today, that it floods and it gets in the sand, gets in the system, and they can't deliver the water. Been working very closely with them over the last 12 months on a new project they want delivered. It's about a $16.5 million fund. We said to them that we would support $5 million going to the council to get that project up. And we also wrote to the federal water minister, Tanya Plibersek, to ask to match our funding of $5 million. Proud and pleased to say today that not only have the federal government approved the $5 million to come through, and we've supported that as well. So $10 million announced today for the Mossman second intake to get water, with $6.4 million from the Douglas Council, which is huge. We have some communities, councils that don't want to put in anything, expect governments to pay. But great now that we can announce that $5 million coming from the feds, $5 million from the state, and $6.4 from the Douglas Shire Council. So that's, once again, I'll go back to Deb Franklin's comments around that we don't do anything. We've been working very closely with the council on this project for a long time now. And today we're actually delivering our funding to help them get on with it.
That's a very timely announcement, Glenn. Just want to backtrack one step if I could. How could a council like Douglas Shire, the second most visited shire in the country, find themselves in a predicament where their local water infrastructure failed so miserably over like throughout Jasper and the floods? How and why would a council get themselves into that where they have no backup plan and no vision?
Well, they certainly had vision. They identified that there was going to be a need more than 12 months ago, that they would need a second intake or a proper supply that wouldn't get affected by things coming down the gorge. So they did have some vision over 12 months ago to get this done. The previous mayor was certainly passionate about it. I know that the current mayor, she's very passionate about this project as well. But you know, this was unprecedented. The water that came through that region, unprecedented. So, you know, you don't appreciate that whatever's in the ground's going to get disturbed and washed away by severe flooding. And it's hard to predict that. The systems that are in the ground are there. They do their testing on it often to make sure there's no leaks. I know a lot of councils do that work. But this was unprecedented, and the supply networks were severely impacted by the flooding. And you can't predict a lot of that stuff, and the locations previously where there's been flooding weren't impacted, but this one was a river.
So the Shire hasn't rested on their laurels and been reactive to this situation. You feel that they've done the best they possibly could?
Well, they had a team in the council during this flooding event that was actually looking at how to get out on the ground and fix some of this up. As you'd appreciate, it took a long time to actually even get access to the breaks where the systems were. What that's like is, if imagine walking along and sticking a whole heap of holes in your garden hose, whatever comes out the end, which was trying to fill up the reservoirs to feed into Port Douglas, we just couldn't get the pressure up, so they had to meticulously go through and fix every single break and leak. And some of it was extreme. You know, there's just total washaways and system just washed away. So it was very challenging. But you know, I acknowledge the council and the work they did during that time to try and get this thing back as quickly as they could. Now, with funding coming forward for that second intake, absolutely amazing for that community. And now they can not only get reliable supply, but then they can spend some extra time now on making sure that the networks are deliverable for the growing future, particularly Port Douglas.
Thank you. And one last question about funding, actually. Just yesterday, Douglas Shire Council confirmed that they're going to spend a further $7 million over the next 12 months on securing their water supply. I just wanted to know, can Douglas Shire expect to recoup any of that money going forward from the state? What's the approach, and what would be the approach with that?
Well, we still always work with our local councils and fund them under building our regions. When I became Minister for Water, I made it specific that building our regions used to be a program where you could spend it, councils could spend it on whatever they want. It could be to upgrade a park, it could be to build a playground. I understood that there's a lot of work that needed to be done by all councils, so we made sure that money that is now for building our regions goes specifically to councils for water projects, whether it be wastewater or whether it be water treatment or water delivery. So building our regions rounds are still open. We want to make sure that councils continue to apply for that. But I'll keep working with the council. As I said, we're now funding this new project moving forward. and if there's other projects they're looking at, we'll always continue to work with them. As I said, Deb Frecklington was here. When you asked her what would she do, she said, I'd go and meet with council. After she just met with council, still come up with no plan what she would do in the future. And that's one of the problems that the LNP have had, is they haven't told anyone what their plan is for water security for Queensland, other than blaming the state government for things that we're actually doing.
On that note, Glenn Butcher, I just wanted to say thank you for your time today. It's much appreciated, and thanks for giving up some time today.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for your time. Good on you.
Cheers.
And go the Blues.